You want to know how a retirement party becomes the moment you find out exactly what your family thinks of you? I was standing at the kitchen counter that Saturday morning going through the last of the vendor confirmations. The florist had called about the centerpieces. The catering hall in Naperville had sent over the final headcount form. I had 43 names on that guest list, a deposit of $4,000 already cleared, and a folder on my kitchen table so thick it looked like a legal brief. 63 years old, two bad knees, and I had done all of it myself. Every phone call, every decision, every dollar. My daughter's name is Joanna. She is 31 years old, and she has her father's eyes and her grandmother's stubbornness, and a husband named Reed who works in finance and has never once in 4 years looked me in the eye when he shakes my hand. The party was for Joanna, not a retirement party for me, for her. She had spent 7 years working her way up at a healthcare consulting firm downtown, and when she made senior director at 31, I told her we were celebrating. I told her she deserved a real party, not just dinner at a restaurant with paper napkins. I told her I would handle everything, and I did. I want you to understand what handling everything looked like for me that year. My husband, Joanna's father, passed 6 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. 14 weeks from diagnosis to the end. We had been married 34 years. After he died, I went back to work full-time as a bookkeeper for a property management company in Oak Park. I am not a wealthy woman. I drive a 2018 Civic with a cracked dashboard trim I keep meaning to replace. I clip coupons. I buy my dress clothes at Chico's during the semi-annual sale. For Joanna's party, I spent $11,000. I want you to sit with that number for a moment. $11,000. That was my emergency fund. That was the money I had been setting aside since my husband died. The money that sat in a savings account and made me feel like I could breathe. I spent it on my daughter's party because I wanted her to have something beautiful. Because her father wasn't here to see her become this woman, and I thought if I could fill that room with flowers and good food and everyone who loved her, maybe his absence would hurt a little less for both of us. I booked the Trillium Room at the Naperville venue. I hired a caterer who did a tasting with Joanna and Reed in February. Joanna picked the salmon and the bruschetta and the little crab cakes Reed liked. I hired a DJ because Joanna said she wanted dancing. I ordered a custom cake from a bakery in Wheaton that does buttercream flowers, the kind that look almost too real to eat. I sent out printed invitations, naughty invites, because Joanna's grandmother on her father's side is 81 years old and she doesn't use a smartphone. I did all of this. In March, about 6 weeks before the party, Joanna called me on a Tuesday evening to talk through the seating arrangement. We were on the phone for almost an hour. She asked me about the table linen colors and whether I'd confirmed the parking situation with the venue. I had. I told her I had a binder. She laughed and said, "Of course I had a binder." We said goodnight the way we always did, with "I love you," and I hung up feeling full, feeling useful, feeling like her mother in the best possible way. I didn't realize she hadn't disconnected. I set my phone face down on the counter and started washing the dinner dishes. And then I heard it. My phone was still on, still live, still carrying everything happening on the other end of that call. I heard Reed's voice first. He said, and I am going to tell you this exactly the way it came through that speaker. He said, "Your mother is going to make this weird. You know that, right? She's going to want to be in every photo and give some speech and make the whole night about her being the one who paid for it." I stopped moving. Joanna said, I know, she's already so involved." Reed said, "She's not involved. She's running it. There's a difference. This is supposed to be your night, and she's basically made herself the event coordinator." Joanna said, "What do you want me to do? She already put in the money." There was a pause, and then Reed said, "Talk to my mother. She has ideas." Reed's mother is a woman I will call Patricia. Patricia lives in a very large house in Hinsdale. Patricia's husband is a partner at a law firm. Patricia wears silk blouses and has opinions about wine and has never once offered to contribute a single dollar toward anything involving my daughter's life. Not the wedding, not the down payment on their condo, not one birthday dinner. but Patricia has ideas. The next thing I heard was Joanna's voice, quieter now, like she had moved to another room. She said, "What if we just tell her the venue moved the date and we're switching things up? We keep her busy with, like, confirming stuff, but have Patricia's people actually run the night." Reed said, "And the money?" Joanna said, "She already paid it. It's not like we can give it back." I stood at my kitchen sink with my hands in the dishwater and I did not move for a long time. Then I picked up the phone and I ended the call. I didn't throw anything. I didn't cry, not right then. I stood there with a dish towel in my hand and I looked at the binder on my kitchen table, the one with the vendor contracts and the seating chart and the menu selections Joanna had made at a tasting I drove her to and paid for. I looked at it for a while. Then I went and I sat in the chair my husband used to sit in, the one by the window in the living room, and I let myself understand what I had just heard. My daughter, my only child, the person I had gone back to work for, the person I had rebuilt my entire life around after her father died, she had just told her husband that it didn't matter that I'd spent my savings because I couldn't get it back anyway. She called me the next morning like nothing had happened, asked me if I'd gotten a response from her cousin about the RSVP. I said yes. I said I'd follow up. I said everything fine and normal and unremarkable, and I got off the phone and I sat very still. Here is what I want you to understand about where I was in that moment. I am not a woman who grew up expressing anger. My mother didn't. Her mother didn't. We are a family of women who swallow things, who smile through it, who say I'm fine until we actually believe it. I had done that my whole life, and I had raised a daughter and buried a husband and gone back to work at 57 years old, and I had kept swallowing. But this time I could feel it differently. This time I could feel it differently. This time the thing I was being asked to swallow had a price tag, a very specific, very concrete price tag. And something in me, something that had been quiet for 30 years, went still in a different way. Not the stillness of swallowing, the stillness of deciding. I opened my laptop. I pulled up the catering contract first. I had booked through my name, paid with my checking account, listed myself as the primary contact. The caterer, a woman named Angela, who had been lovely through every interaction, had my cell number and my email. Not Joanna's, not Reed's. Mine. Then I opened the venue contract. Same thing. My name, my credit card, my signature. The event coordinator at the Trillium Room, a man named Greg, who had emailed me 14 times over the past 3 months, knew me by first name. Then the DJ, the cake, the florist, every single vendor. My name, my contact, my money. I made a list. Then I made 3 phone calls. The first was to Angela at the catering company. I told her there had been a family emergency and I needed to cancel the event. She was sympathetic. She walked me through the cancellation policy. Because I was canceling more than 30 days out, I would receive 60% of my deposit back. I said thank you. I said I understood. I hung up. The second call was to Greg at the venue. I had read my contract carefully, the way my husband always told me to read contracts, and I knew that my cancellation window had not yet closed. I told Greg I needed to release the date. He asked if everything was okay. I told him it was a personal matter. He processed it while I was on the phone. The third call was to the florist. By the time I finished, I had 3 cancellation confirmations in my email inbox and refunds totaling just over $6,000 pending back to my account. Then I sat down and I wrote Joanna a letter. Not a text, not an email. A letter on paper and my handwriting, the way my mother taught me to communicate things that mattered. I told her I loved her. I told her I had heard the call. I told her I was not angry, which was mostly true, or at least anger was not the biggest thing I felt. I told her I was sad in a way I didn't have words for yet. I told her that I had spent $11,000 because I thought she deserved to be celebrated, and that what I had heard her say was that the money didn't matter because I couldn't take it back. I told her I could take some of it back, as it turned out. I told her that I hoped she and Reed had a lovely party, whatever they planned, that I hoped Patricia's people did a good job, that I hoped the flowers were nice and the food was good, and that When she looked at the photos, she felt celebrated. I told her I would be here when she was ready to talk. I sealed the letter and I drove to her building in Wicker Park and I put it in her mailbox myself. Then I drove to my sister Claudette's house in Evanston. Claudette is 68 and she has known me since I was born, and she makes coffee the way our mother did, strong enough to hold a spoon upright. I sat at her kitchen table and I told her everything. And Claudette, who does not waste words, put down her mug and said, "Good. Now you know." I did know. That was the thing. I finally, completely knew. Joanna called me 4 days later. She had gotten the letter. She was crying before she finished saying hello. She told me she was sorry. She told me Reed had pushed her, that she hadn't meant it the way it sounded, that she didn't know I had heard. I listened. I let her talk. I didn't interrupt and I didn't fill the silences. When she was done, I said, "I know you love me. I think you got confused about what I was owed in that love." She cried harder. I said, "I need some time, and I need you to think, not about the party, but about what you said about the money." She knew what I meant. She had said the money didn't matter because I couldn't get it back. That sentence, 6 words, was the thing I needed her to sit with. Because it wasn't about the money, it was about what she thought I was worth once the money was already spent. It has been 4 months since that Saturday morning at the kitchen counter. Joanna and I have had 4 real conversations, the kind where we are both fully there, not performing. 2 of them were hard. One ended with both of us crying. One ended with silence that wasn't angry, but wasn't resolved either. We are not where we were. I don't know if we will get back there exactly. I think we might get somewhere better eventually if we're both willing to be honest. But that's work that takes time. Reed apologized once, briefly, in a text message. I thanked him and I did not respond further. We'll see about Reed. Patricia, to my knowledge, has never been told that the original party was canceled because I made those calls. I find that detail quietly satisfying. I bought myself something with part of the refund money. Nothing extravagant. A weekend at a small bed and breakfast up in Galena, just me and a stack of books and a room that looked out over the river. I walked the main street in the mornings. I ate dinner alone, and it was the most peaceful I'd felt in months, maybe years. I sat on the porch of that inn on the last evening watching the light go flat over the water, and I thought about my husband, about the 34 years we had, about the woman I had made myself smaller to be, the woman who swallowed things, who said she was fine, who handed over her whole emergency fund and asked for nothing in return. I thought about the moment I picked up my phone and ended that call. It was such a small gesture, such a quiet thing. No scene, no confrontation, no speech, just the press of a button, and then 3 more phone calls, and the letter. My mother used to say that dignity doesn't announce itself. She meant it as a comfort, I think, a way of saying you don't need an audience to do the right thing. I understand it differently now. Dignity doesn't announce itself because it doesn't need to. It just is. You either have it or you're working to find it again. I'm working. Some days it feels close. Some days the chair by the window is just a chair, and the house is very quiet, and I miss my husband, and I miss the daughter I thought I knew, and I let myself miss them both for a while. Then I get up. I make coffee. I go to work. I am 63 years old. I have a 28 Civic and a cracked dashboard trim and a savings account that is starting slowly to grow again. I have a sister in Evanston who makes strong coffee and doesn't waste words. I have a daughter who is learning something hard and necessary about who her mother is. I have time, and I have learned, finally, that what I cannot get back is not always what I have lost. I've been thinking a lot lately about what we teach people by what we allow, not in a grand way, not in a lecture hall way, just in the quiet, ordinary way that life keeps showing you the same lesson until you finally stop looking away from it. I allowed a lot over the years. I allowed myself to be the one who handled things while others received them. I allowed my name to be on every contract, every deposit, every confirmation email, while my presence at the actual event was treated as optional. I allowed myself to believe that doing more would make me matter more, that if I just gave enough money, enough planning, enough effort, the people I loved would understand what I was worth. What I heard on that phone call was the result of everything I had been teaching Joanna without meaning to. I had taught her slowly and without words that I would absorb the cost of being dismissed, that my feelings had a ceiling, but my giving did not, that the money was spent, so the debt was settled, and what happened to me after that was secondary. That is a hard thing to understand about yourself, that you participated in this, that the woman who raised her, who drove her to that catering tasting, who addressed 43 printed invitations by hand, that woman had also spent 30 years showing her daughter that her own needs came last. You don't get to be shocked by the harvest when you planted the seeds yourself. But here is the other thing I've come to understand. The moment I ended that call and stood at my kitchen sink deciding what to do, that was also something I was teaching her. The 3 phone calls were not revenge. I want to be clear about that. I did not cancel that party to punish Joanna. I canceled it because I finally understood that absorbing the cost of being dismissed was not love. It was a habit, and habits can be broken. Real love, the kind worth having, the kind worth being, has a spine to it. It can be warm and still have limits. It can be generous and still say no. I spent so many years confusing softness with strength that I had forgotten there is a version of caring for someone that includes refusing to be treated carelessly, that the most honest thing I ever did for my daughter was let her experience a consequence. Read, I'm less sure about. Some people learn. Some people just get quieter about what they think. Time will tell me which one he is. Claudette said it best, the way she always does, with 6 words and no apology for their weight. Good, she said. Now you know. And she was right. Knowing is not a small thing. Most of us spend decades trying to unknow what we already know because the knowing is inconvenient, because it requires something from us, because it means the comfortable arrangement has to change. I know now. I know what I'm worth, and I know what I'll absorb, and I know the difference between the two. I am 63 years old, and that knowledge came late. But it came. And some mornings, when the house is quiet and I'm drinking my coffee in the chair by the window, I think that arriving late is still arriving. I'm still here. I'm still learning. And the savings account is growing again. Slowly, the way good things tend to.